Fox News alert: the federal government striking a deal with Oregon state officials on a plan to address violent protests that have continued in Portland for 62 straight nights. The governor tweeting, quote, "After my discussions with Vice President Pence and others, the federal government has agreed to withdraw federal officers from Portland. They have acted as an occupying force and brought violence. Starting tomorrow, all Customs and Border Protection and ICE officers will leave downtown Portland." DHS officials say agents will be on standby nearby and will be ready to respond quickly if they need to. But earlier this morning, President Trump said federal agents would remain after unloading on the governor and Portland's mayor.
If they don't secure their city soon, we have no choice. We're going to have to go in and clean it out. We'll do it very easily. We're all prepared to do it. So in Portland, they either clean out their city and do the job and get rid of the anarchists and agitators, which is what they are.
This is Outnumbered, and I'm Melissa Francis. Here today is Harris Faulkner, Fox Business anchor Dagan McDowell, host of Kennedy on the Fox Business Network, Kennedy herself, and joining us today, former House Oversight Committee Chairman and Fox News contributor Jason Chaffetz. Jason, I think this is a great decision, given the footage that you saw from William Lajeunesse of the incoming that those federal officers were taking inside that federal courthouse, the fact that so many of them have been injured, the fact that so many of them have been nearly blinded. If federal officials don't support what they're doing there on the ground, why should they be there risking their lives? And also, given the fact that so many have blamed the federal forces who are there trying to defend the courthouse for the violence, let's have them pull out and see if it instantly ends. What if we had almost 60 nights here? Let's see if we go without any violence now that the feds are out. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm not very optimistic that because it will be state police from Oregon, which it actually should be, as opposed to federal agents, that suddenly the people that are rioting, the Antifas of the world, will say, oh, well, let's pack up and go home. I don't think that's going to happen. The reality is Portland failed to respond and protect that facility. That's why the feds had to respond. It's gone on for far too long. It is a terrible embarrassment. I thought the statement by the governor was just a revisionist history. The reason you have to have armed people there is because they're attacking a federal courthouse. There are people that work there. That is where we administer justice in this country. And to have it continue to be attacked is fundamentally wrong. We'll see what happens tonight. But finally, Oregon, I think, is getting the message that Donald Trump will come in and solve this in its totality if they don't do something. And I'm glad the governor's going to try to take a go of it, and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, Kennedy, I just feel like it's going to go a lot like CHOP. If the federal forces come out of there, then I seriously doubt that instantly, these anarchists are going to stop attacking that federal courthouse. In fact, it's very likely in my mind that it'll go just like that police precinct, that it will be taken over in that zone. And then what are you going to do? I mean, at that point, do you honestly think that the state police are going to be able to go in and retake it without violence? Or will they say, as the mayor of Seattle did, oh, it's okay, it's the summer of love. I'm sure this is going to work out just fine. I'm not going to worry about it. They're having a party. Your thoughts?
If you thought Jenny Durkin was declawed in Seattle, you haven't met the nutless wonder, Ted Wheeler. And I have great faith in the Multnomah County Sheriff's Department and Portland Police and the state police as well, but they have not been able to deal with these protests locally, which they should. And having federal law enforcement deployed in cities should give all of us pause who respect federalism and the Constitution. And that's a very important thing. I don't think there is a lack of law enforcement in Oregon. I think in Portland, there's a lack of leadership. I think the governor of Oregon lacks leadership, and I think Ted Wheeler and Kate Brown are both just basically pouncing on this as a political opportunity to push back at the president instead of telling citizens in Portland and Oregon as a whole how they are going to make the state and the city better and make it not a magnet for people who want to sow chaos and hurt businesses and limit the freedom of citizens there, but how they are going to make the climate better so businesses can thrive there, so people want to visit, so tourism can, when we're over the pandemic, resume. Because all of this is happening at the same time. You've got protests that devolve into riots during a pandemic. It completely sucks. And there's no better time, there's no greater need for leadership than at a moment like this. And the leadership has utterly failed people there. And that is sad.
Dagan, I mean, local and state leaders now have won the Booby Prize. You know, I mean, they're forcing the federal troops out. I hope they leave. I'm sure the violence will magically disappear. I mean, as Juan Williams argued on the show this week, the federal forces there are the cause of the violence. They're the ones that drew these anarchists and Antifa and all the protests. They're the ones that drew it there. So if they leave, it will instantly be better, or it will be up to those who have argued to get rid of them to then try and do something about it on their own.
How is that not like blaming an assault victim for the assault? I mean, the message is you had it coming if you're a federal officer. And in fact, that's what the governor of Oregon is saying directly via Twitter. The federal officers acted as an occupying force and brought violence. So you had it coming. A Molotov cocktail or a metal pipe. Anybody who doesn't live in the upside-down left-wing Luniverse knows that's simply not true. But what's at stake here is, if we talk about politically, there's been a great call, even among conservatives, for President Trump and the federal officers to get out of Portland. You make these leaders, whether it's Ted Wheeler or the governor, all the local leaders, you make them own the destruction. They don't get to blame President Trump anymore. I mean, who are they going to blame after that? Mitch McConnell or then Fudgy the Whale if that doesn't work out? They own this. They own this. And if you own a business in Portland or one of these other left-wing cities, my pants would be on fire, and I would be Yosemite Sam, angry as hell that somebody didn't have my back.
Yeah. Harris, I mean, I hope, I don't know the status of this building, if it's open during the day. I don't know how it possibly could be, given everything that's going on there. I hope it's not, because we don't want to see, you know, anyone who's just trying to do their job have their life at risk. But your thoughts on what's going on here?
Well, you know, I can't speak to this particular building, but I do remember from the hearing yesterday with the Attorney General William Barr in front of the House Judiciary Committee, at one point, one of the Republican lawmakers was thanking him and his people at DOJ and federal officers, because remember, this fell to DHS and DOJ, you know, thanking him for his people on the ground who are having to work among threats, among the threat of not knowing what each night or each day would bring. So at least at some of these federal buildings, yes, people have been going to work every day. We know that from the hearing. But I would say this. Who's going to pay for all of the lost everything in all of this? I'm kind of with Dagan, like, who... I think you meant in a broader scheme, if you're a business owner. I mean, you know, just from a person on the ground as a citizen, your taxes are going to go to some of this. Now, the federal building is an exception to that, but there's been other destruction there. I'm curious to know, as we talk about a coronavirus bill today on the Hill, you know, where's the money going to come from for the other disease that's out there that is certainly, you know, livelihood crippling, if you will, with the businesses and the people that this puts pressure on. You know, can't walk your dog and know that it's going to be okay after a certain hour in some of our American cities. I'm now, again, not just focusing on Portland. It has not been a summer of love, but it has been an expensive summer for somebody.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And Jason, you know, we have seen that's one of the big things that Democrats are holding up in the coronavirus relief bill is this idea that as they all trash President Trump, they want more money from Washington where the money printer exists, because in all of these places, there is no tax revenue coming in, very little, because everything has been shut down. And if you look at a place like Portland or Seattle, The businesses are gone, and they are not coming back, because the reason you pay your taxes on the most basic level is because police are enforcing safety and a rule of law. And in those places, those things have collapsed. So they're also going to be deprived of all kinds of services because no one's going to open a business there, and there's going to be no then tax revenue to rebuild for their local officials. Their only choice is to beg the feds, right, Jason?
No, their only choice is to vote in different people. There's the commonality here. These are all run by Democrats. These are Democrats that are mayors, Democrats that are governors. They allowed this to happen. They allowed it to fester. They elected this leadership. I agree with all of you that the total lack of political will and leadership by these mayors and these governors has been pathetic. When it was happening in Washington, you had Jay Inslee, who didn't even know that it was going on. You go to Portland, they sow their own rewards. They are the ones that created this mess and allowed it to fester. And none of us outside of Oregon and Washington should have to pay a dime to it. We have our own problems and challenges. Let them pay the bill and let them elect the people that will actually administer justice. Like in New York, it didn't happen with Rudy Giuliani, but it does happen with Bill de Blasio. So, you know, who you elect really does matter.